Welcome, everybody. You're listening to AFFF 21's Weekend Wrap-Up Podcast. Here is your host, Kevin Ferrara.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Weekend Wrap-Up here on AFFF 21. I'm your host, Kevin Ferrara, and folks, as I said last episode, it's great to be back on the air. Great to be back bringing the audience members topics of discussion that are being discussed within the firehouse, should be discussed within the firehouse. So again, it's great. Appreciate the support everybody's been giving me. You know the drill. Give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe to our various channels. We greatly appreciate it. We're gonna do something here pretty soon. We're close to getting that 100th subscriber on YouTube. And really what I want to do is once we breach that barrier, that's sort of like the magic barrier with YouTube, because once you hit 100, you get a special URL. You can tweak your URL for that. I want to do a little payback to the audience members, subscribers of that channel. So, let's try to get this. I think we only need 4, folks. We only need 4 to break that barrier. So, give us a subscribe. Subscribe to that channel, and we're going to do a little something special for audience members, maybe like a little giveaway for that. So please share out that, much support to everybody. Cannot thank you guys enough. So, this topic that we're going to talk about for this episode, this is one, and, those that have been watching me a while, I got multiple screens. You'll see me bounce around here. This one's been getting a lot of attention as of the past week or so on social media, and it pertains to proposals, legislation proposal, really to make various cancers and illnesses associated with exposure to burn pits. Now, and we're gonna get into the definition of burn pits. What Congress is looking at here. As the episode goes on, but that's going to be the topic of this episode. Legislation that's being discussed, and there's some confusion going around, and this is why I want to try to clear the air, if you will. It's funny I say that with burn pits, but yeah, we need to make sure everybody understands exactly what this piece of legislation is about, how it can affect military members, and it's really directed towards military members, even though there were civilians, that were at some of these deploy locations. But I think the discussion can transfer over to municipal fire departments as well, because it's talking about toxins, and we're going to get into it here in a second. So before we get started, let's go ahead and hear from one of our sponsors, and I'm not going to tell you who it is this episode. I'm going to let it be a little surprise on that, and then we'll be back. Thanks.
Firefighters work long shifts. That's the nature of the job. If your station is like most, coffee is what keeps you going. That's why you should check out Fire Department Coffee. Veteran owned and run by firefighters, Fire Department Coffee offers a wide variety of delicious coffee, including their signature line of spirit-infused coffee, all roasted by hand and delivered right to your door. Even better, 10% of net proceeds from every sale goes to benefit wounded, ill, or injured firefighters and other first responders. And they've got a special deal for the Weekend Wrap-Up listeners. Enter discount code AFFF21, that's AFFF21 at checkout to get 10% off your next order at Fire Department Coffee. FireDepartmentCoffee.com. That's FireDePTCoffee.com.
All right, folks, welcome back, and hopefully you gave us a thumbs up, a like, a subscribe. If not, I think it's in this corner. I'm reaching over my head here. Let's do it this way. Let's see if I can get the finger up here. Nope, I'm pretty bad with doing this. Right in here, you should see the little flame down there. That's our channel. One of these days I'll get that right. For those that are watching on YouTube, how to point to where the little subscribe is. But you can subscribe other ways on YouTube. So, again, please do. We appreciate the support. And like I said at the top of the podcast here, once we break that barrier, we're going to do a little something special for YouTube followers, subscribers, sort of like a little giveaway. So make sure you get in there and subscribe to our channel. So with that, like I said, top of the podcast here, this episode, we're going to talk about something that's, like I said, it's been rolling along, different groups, fire department groups on social media, Facebook. And this one, it's from militarytimes.com. They wrote this article, and I'm just going to bring it up. Those that watch me on YouTube, my head bobs back and forth, different monitors here. So Leo Shane III is the author of this particular article. It's under Military Times, their veterans columns, and the title of this one is called "Plan to Give New Benefits to Burn Pit Victims, Passes the House, Faces a Difficult Path Ahead." So when I said before there was some confusion on the actual definition of what these burn pits are. And, right away, as soon as we hear, burn pits, especially, for military firefighters, we instinctively think it is fire training burn pits, the fire training fires that we did, all the time. I can't count how many live fires we did in these, fire training pits. And that's really what the proper terminology should be. They should not be called burn pits. They should be, live fire training pits or training grounds, something like that. Because if we keep using just the general term burn pits, that's where this confusion comes into play. Especially in terms of legislation. So, as the piece of legislation that's being discussed, last week, legislators, House of Representative legislators down in D.C., they passed what this author says is sweeping military toxic exposure legislation, which could grant new disability benefits for 23 illnesses linked to burn pit smoke and benefit as many as 1 in every 5 veterans living in America today. Well, as you go through this legislation, and you know the drill, I'm going to have the links to this story, to the actual legislation that's up there. That's going to be in the podcast descriptions. So you'll be able to click on those, follow along, or, after you listen to the podcast, take a look at it, and, come up with your own opinions on what this is. And as always, please chime in comments, whether it's on Facebook, social media, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on the various podcast channels, if you have that ability to. We look forward to your comments, suggestions, your feedback, whether it's positive, negative. It's always welcome. So what they're saying with this, yes, it passed the House, House of Representatives, but it's going to have a little bit of a challenge with the Senate. So going back, before we get into the weeds with that, so like I said, fire training grounds, you got your large frame, small frame mock-ups, whatever it is. Whether you're using propane, you're still using POL, liquid fuel. Hopefully you're not dumping the little red Bowser crap that's in there. What's being burned. And that, whatever you're burning, whatever type of fuel that you're burning, that should be included in your training report. Whether it's combustibles, flammable liquids, class A, class B, whatever you want to call it. But training officers that are out there, make sure that is being documented on the training report. Because if it's not documented, your firefighters are going to have a hell of a time trying to, if legislation like this one does not get passed, or until it gets passed, they have a hell of a hard time to try to prove they were exposed to various materials or chemicals. Everybody knows if it's not documented, it doesn't happen. Also, I've been suggesting here locally in Pennsylvania, exposure reports. Fill out exposure reports after every training incident that's involving a live fire. Because again, those products of combustion, whether it's, the products of combustion or the actual fuel itself, if you are exposed to that, if you come in contact with that, you as an individual really need to document that on an exposure report, because we're seeing 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, various diseases, medical illnesses, to include various forms of cancer, are being diagnosed in firefighters. And again, it goes back, how do you associate your illnesses with exposure in the fire service? And until these presumptives are made, and we're slowly getting there, folks, until these presumptives are made, you have to document everything. Let's face it, it's your health care, your health and wellness is your responsibility. I've said that for, countless times. Don't rely on somebody else to document this stuff for you, because it's just not going to happen. So do it yourself. If you have to ruffle feathers, if you have to piss some people off in doing it, go for it. I went through that at one of my installations. They tried getting us to clean up the fire training pit. There was a drain outside the perimeter of this mock-up, this aircraft mock-up. And, I stopped the operation immediately. I told the young crew that was with me, I said, enough. We don't have the proper PPE. I have no idea what the hell is in there. Guys were getting it on their hands, their uniforms, inhaling it. And I'm like, enough is enough. So we went back. I said, hey, we're doing an exposure report because I have no idea what we were just, subjected to. Pissed off some people. They're like, hey, you do an exposure report. The med group's going to get involved. Most likely base leadership's going to get involved. And I'm like, too damn bad. It's my health. It's their health. I'm looking out for my crew. We're doing it. And so suffice it to say, the reports were made. The cleanup never happened. It's still there. It stopped. I'm sure they cleaned it up since then, but this was years and years and years ago. But that's the things you as firefighters, emergency responders need to be looking out for. That is yourselves. Make sure everything is documented. So when it comes to, they said here, linked to burn pit smoke. So that is obviously, smoke is obviously a product of combustion. And, that stuff is, the smoke, obviously you can inhale it. It attaches to your skin, your body. Smoke is very small particulates. Your body can absorb it through bare skin. It attaches to your turnout gear. Eventually, you're touching your turnout gear without proper, PPE, gloves or anything like that. Often, many times, your PPE is not laundered, until you can actually see those particulates. Some departments, they don't have a schedule, whether it's clean or dirty. Your gear should be laundered on a set cycle, and then obviously, as needed on top of that. So, NFPA states minimum 2 washings per year. You may find yourself, you need to wash it, 5, 6, 10 times a year, depending on, how much, particulars you're exposed to and, how busy you are. But at a minimum, twice. And, aside from PFAS in your turnout gear, who knows what's well in your turnout gear when you start doing these trainings, or catching, an actual fire. So don't touch your gear, bare hands, when you're doffing it. and cleaning it. Make sure you wear at a minimum, the surgical grade surgical or medical grade gloves to keep that contamination, that exposure down. So burn pits, in terms of this legislation, is the holes, the pits, whatever you want to call them, that were downrange in deployed locations. Basically that's, they dug these pits to get rid of materials, garbage, body parts. At some locations, they dumped everything in these pits. They dumped fuel on top of that. They lit them off. But the smoke was not contained, and that's where this piece of legislation is really, it comes from, is because as those products of combustion, that smoke, it rose from these pits. Some of these pits, I remember the one at Balad Air Base in Iraq when we were there, prepping to close that place down. We inspected that whole area, and the pit itself, at least, 15, 20 feet deep. I mean, it was, they dug it down. There was sort of like a little ramp to where they could get down and scoop out the crap, and put it in these ash fields, as I called it. And I remember vividly the day we were there inspecting it, because there was a building there. We had to do a building inspection. There was a Host National in a bulldozer, front loader, if you will, that was moving the ash from one side of the field to the other and creating a dust cloud. So, you had that on top of the smoke. And yes, while I was there, the burn pit was still in operation, despite what the Air Force tried claiming. They said, hey, the pits were shut down. They went to an incinerator. That's not true. There was a lot of issues going on there. So burn pits, again, deployed locations, and this legislation only applies to certain locations that you were deployed to. So, the problem being is not everybody deployed to these locations, but yet they still may have cancers, exposure to toxins, such as AFFF, that contains PFAS, and other, it goes back to what I said before. Document what you're burning. It's you may not get deployed, but at home station you were deployed to whatever flammable liquid, materials, asbestos, all this stuff. So you may develop illnesses or cancers because of that, but you're not eligible under this piece of legislation, this specific piece of legislation, because you were not deployed downrange. And again, like I said before, fire training grounds, fire training pits, make sure you say they're fire training pits, not burn pits. And then, there was one firefighter that had reached out to me. He's like, sort of, you look at the Vietnam era, they would take, from the toilets, back in the Vietnam era, the outhouses, you did your business in an outhouse. It went down into a little, container. It's usually a cut off 55-gallon drum. Whoever the crew was responsible for cleaning that up, they would take it out, pour some gasoline in there, and burn, the waste. So, does that cause illnesses, cancers, diseases? Most likely. If it wasn't, the fuel, it could have been, the waste itself. So, those are things to look at. Unfortunately, some of that's not identified in this piece of legislation. So, just going through. And the title of this legislation is the Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxics, and it's called PACT, P-A-C-T, Act. And again, the intent of this piece of legislation is to establish presumptive of service connection for 23 respiratory illnesses and cancers related to the smoke from burn pits used extensively in those war zones to dispose of various type of waste, many of them toxic. So again, I've told firefighters on social media, I said this does not apply to firefighters in fire training pits. There are bills out there like the Michael Leasick Military Firefighters Protection Act that would establish, if passed, they've been dragging this damn bill along for years, and it's pissing me off, because they could pass this in a heartbeat. There's no excuse for this bill to keep getting kicked down the road. So that bill, Mike's bill, if they pass it, and I'm pushing to get the thing passed this year, would establish presumptives for military firefighters. If they develop certain types of cancers, it would be presumed to be associated with their firefighting operations. The firefighter would not have to document anything, would not have to explain, hey, I was exposed to AFFF here, and this is how much. Or, I was exposed to products of combustion during firefighting operations. It would just be simply presumed you're sick because of your firefighting operations. There's Fed Firefighters Act. Neil Hogan was working on that. He's still working on that. We're trying to get both sides, military and civilian, protected. These presumptions established, but legislation keeps getting kicked down the road. So this one here, they talk about, aside from these burn pits, the bill, and I'm reading off this article, it says the bill also provides for new benefits of veterans who face radiation exposure during deployments throughout the Cold War, adds hypertension and, I'm going to butcher this, monoclonal gammopathy. You're gonna have to read this in the article, to the list of illnesses linked to Agent Orange exposure in the Vietnam War, and requires new medical exams for all veterans with toxic exposure claims. So that one I'm still trying to figure out, why they would need new medical claims for all veterans with toxic exposure claims, especially if that veteran has already gone through various medical exams. And I've had firefighters reach out to me. They were like, hey, Kev, my doc, they haven't signed a nexus letter, but they absolutely believe my exposure was because of this or that. So I really don't know how much more a doctor can say. I don't know if Congress or the DoD is going to have some type of checklist that doctor has to go ahead and mark off, and is that going to be an eligibility factor? If they don't check off a certain box, even though they have these cancers and other illnesses associated with these deployments, if there's something not marked on this form, is that going to disqualify a firefighter or a veteran? Let's look at the broad perspective, because this really applies to veterans. So that's a question that really needs to be brought up and looked at. So, they're saying, this provisions, if passed, it could affect, 3.5 million veterans. But it's, they're estimating cost. And this is what I said earlier, that it's going to have a hard time in the Senate. This is why, because they're estimating it could cost more than $207 billion. That's $207 billion over the next decade. And now these are expansion of benefits. So same thing with the whole PFAS exposure. It all comes down to money. Administration is look how much the current administration has increased their budget. We're talking trillions, for various, pet projects, Congress, that really doesn't do anything for the community, or the veterans themselves. So, they get what they want. Meanwhile, veterans and military members and their family members, DoD civilians are left hung out to dry. So I really do think this $207 billion is going to get reduced significantly in terms of compensation. But like I said, that's just for this. We start factoring in, if legislation, proposed legislation, presumptive legislation is passed for PFAS for firefighters, that $207 billion, that's going to increase. I mean, you might as well just put, $1 trillion for compensation every year. And really, that's still probably not enough, because we need to go beyond the veterans. We need to go beyond the firefighters. We need to start looking at their family members as well. And I've seen it. I've seen it with other legislation. Like I said, that cost, they drop it right down. They're like, oh, let's ask. And those in the military, and really anywhere. If you're responsible for working a budget, fire chiefs, this. You ask for the world up front. You ask for the world, shoot for the moon, and then as that budget, the overall budget is chiseled away, you hope you get a little bit more than just breadcrumbs. You take what you get and be thankful for it, and then move on. Do what you can with it. I think the same thing is going to happen with this legislation. Those that are affected, they're going to have to accept the compensation, and then move on. It sucks. That's just the reality of all of this. It's if we could give every affected military member a large sum of money every year, that would be great. But the reality is we can't do it. But we gotta keep fighting to get them the best compensation package, medical compensation package that we can get them. And that's what I'm fighting for with Congress. Other organizations, I've got a network of individuals that are working it alongside of me. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure what is passed is the best package, the best bill, best piece of legislation at the time. We can always amend it, but enough of this. Hey, let's just get it in the system, and we'll hope for the best. Later on. Well, we've seen legislation like that. You get it in the door, you get it passed, and it sits there with no real amendments for years, decades to come, and that's just unacceptable. So let me bring up. If I could find it, I may have lost it. I hope I didn't. There's the bill. So again, the current HR bill, this one, it's HR 3967. It is short titled called the Honoring Our Promise to Address Comprehensive Toxic Act of 2021, or the Honoring Our PACT Act of 2021. Now, this is the one that I found. Not sure if the 2022 is out there. I tried searching for it. I couldn't find it. So this is the bill that's already been out there. It should be being worked. So, I just did a few searches here. One of them for ARF, or AFFF, not ARF, but AFFF. And there's five hits on AFFF, but the one we're looking at here, or at least I'm looking at, it talks about, initial report. Let me scroll up here. It's under Title 7, Registries, Records, and Other Matters. So, here we go again with another registry. We've had the burn pit registry. I filled that damn thing out, decades ago. And, here we are. We're just now starting to hear about, some action on burn pits. Again, eligible individuals. Are they going to start with those that are in this registry? Are they going to target, individuals like me that filled out the registry and said, hey, I was exposed to burn pits, for compensation? Now with me, I've told everybody, hey, I'm 100% VA rated, permanent and total. I never have to go back and get an exam. So I can't go above 100. So really, my exposure to burn pits at this point in my life, it's moot, because based on all the other crap that I've got, burn pit exposure can't add to it. They can document it. That's great, and say, hey, yeah, if I develop cancer down the road, and I've always said it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, based on my exposure to the stuff as a firefighter. What are they going to do with me, years down the road, and say, oh yeah, it's your cancer is because of firefighting. Well, no shit. I know that now. I know that, without even having cancer, I know it's very likely, a very high percentage that if or when, let's just put it that way, if or when I develop a significant illness, it's very likely it's associated with firefighting, or my service, my military service, because some of the locations, we were exposed to crap. It wasn't during firefighting operations, but there was other stuff. Those that have been down to K2, that installation in Uzbekistan, you know what I'm talking about. The exposure we had there, it wasn't affiliated with firefighting, but we were still exposed to some nasty shit. And, that this piece of legislation sort of factors that in. I think that's going to protect those, the K2 individuals that were there. So getting back to this piece of legislation, Title VII registries, records, and other matters. When I did a search for AFFF, it comes in and it says for this registry. Now it says no later than 1 year after the date of this enactment, and it has not been enacted yet, but once it does, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs shall establish and maintain a registry for eligible individuals who may have been exposed to PFAS due to the environmental release of AFFF on military installations to meet the requirements of military spec. Okay, so a couple things with that. You got to be an eligible individual, and we already know when it comes to PFAS blood testing, there's only certain eligible individuals that can get the blood testing. That being firefighters as defined by the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act. Fire truck mechanics, fire suppression hanger systems, those technicians are not eligible for blood testing, even though it's very likely they were exposed to AFFF on a regular basis. Same thing's going to happen with this registry. Again, you got to be eligible. There's going to be certain requirements that you have to, plug in or check that says, yep, I did this, I did that, I was here, I was there, and then it's going to say, yes, you're eligible, or no, sorry, you're shit out of luck, as we say. And then it's going to say, include any information in such registry that the Secretary determines necessary to ascertain and monitor the health effects of exposure of members of the armed forces to PFAS associated with AFFF. So, are they going to start tracking, trending, analyzing like they should have been doing? But the DoD IG report has come out and said, no, DoD doesn't want to do that. So are they going to be required for this? And then here we go again. Develop a public information campaign to inform eligible individuals about the registry, including how to register and the benefits of registering. So develop a public information campaign. Those that know what I'm talking about, this is going to involve millions. They're going to pay contractors to come up with this campaign. And that's millions of dollars that are basically taken away from impacted individuals in terms of medical compensation, care, and treatment. We don't need a damn campaign. Put it out on the news. Put it out on social media. Facebook. You could, just the social media. You put a post out there. It can be shared across the world in seconds, in minutes. You don't need to have somebody come up with a campaign, create a damn stupid ass video, a brochure that nobody's going to read, it's just I've seen the fraud, waste, and abuse on these campaigns, and it really irks me. But like I said, you're spending money on this, and they're taking money that's money that can be used for impacted veterans with this. And then periodically, this one really gets me. Periodically notify eligible individuals of significant developments in the study and treatment of conditions associated with exposure to PFAS. Well, they said the same thing when the Burn Pit Registry was first started. Oh, we're gonna give you updates. We're gonna periodically, give you news updates and changes. And folks, like I said, I signed up for that registry decades ago. I think I got one email that was worthless, and now we're hearing about it, with this legislation. So, what is their definition of periodically? And again, they included that word significant. So, they're going to periodically notify eligible individuals of significant developments. So it's not really public. It's just those that signed up that were eligible for this. They're going to notify them in some manner of significant developments. But again, define significant. And that, yeah, it's crazy. So, as it goes through, they're talking about reports. Again, they're saying initial report not later than a year after the date of the enactment of this act. Secretary of Defense shall submit to Congress a report regarding the following sources of PFAS on military installations other than AFFF. Well, you better have a lot of ink in that printer, a lot of ink in your pens, because we know there are thousands of consumer products out there that contain PFAS. Most recently, a report had come out and said, hey, there's of your cooking pans, cookware, about 70% of it still contains PFAS, despite what manufacturers are saying. Who knows what else? Other than AFFF. Okay, turnout gear. The turnout gear that has been used for decades, by firefighters. We know that contains PFAS. Even current turnout gear. I don't care what the garment manufacturers are telling you. Every piece of turnout gear, because of the moisture barrier, still contains PFAS. Until something replaces it, until Gore, who really manufactures your moisture barrier, comes up with an alternative product, PFAS is going to be in your gear in some level. Now, granted, some have done, they have done an effort to eliminate it from the outer shell, which is great, but those inner liners, that moisture barrier, it's still there. So the potential for exposure is still there. It goes through, it keeps talking about all these different reports and everything, and then a follow-up report. So it says a follow-up report not later than 5 years after submitting the initial report. Under paragraph 1, the Secretary of Veterans Affairs shall submit to Congress a follow-up report containing the following. So you're looking at 6 years, really, before Congress gets true wind of the severity of PFAS contamination. So, it's, again, they don't have to start doing reports until a year after this particular act is passed. And then the VA has 5 years to go ahead and get that information back. So they have a year to do the initial report, another 5 years to do a follow-up report. So you're looking at 6 years. By that time, I hate to say it, folks, you're going to have so many more individuals that are sick and unfortunately have passed away waiting for anything on this before really compensation kicks in, because Congress isn't going to do a damn thing in terms of compensation until Congress and the VA, they're not going to do anything in terms of compensation until these reports are done. So this is why, folks, I say over and over and over, read these bills. This is a 128-page bill that was run through the House. It's sitting over at the Senate. The Senate's probably going to have some issues. They're going to kick it back over to the House. It's going to go back and forth before it ever reaches the president's desk, if it does at all. So it's great that, you can open up a PDF, you can search for different things and find it, whereas in the past, you actually had to sit down and read 128 pages of bullshit before, you found out the truth. And it's like, whoa, wait a second. So again, this one here, as I'm reading it, we're looking at least 6 years before reports are done. And then, there's independent scientific organization they talk about. So going back to, you heard me talk about what an eligible individual defined is. Okay. So in this section, okay, now they're talking about this registry. We're talking about the registry on this for, who is defined as an eligible individual. So it says in this section, the term eligible individual means any individual who, on or after a date specified by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs through regulations, served or is serving in the armed forces at a military installation where AFFF was used, or at another location of the Department of Defense where AFFF was used. So this is going to be, it's not really a PFAS registry. It almost sounds like it's going to be an AFFF registry. So again, I'll read it one more time, and then, like I said, I'm going to have this links to this and where you can find it at up in the podcast description. So again, eligible individual defined. And again, this is for the registry. In this section, the term eligible individual means any individual who, on or after a date specified by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs through regulations, served or is serving in the armed forces at a military installation where AFFF was used, or at another location of the Department of Defense where AFFF was used. So, there's some things that I have issue with that. The DoD has come out and they said, okay, there's like 700 plus bases, military installations that have or suspected of having PFAS contamination due to the release of AFFF. There's some installations out there that they've chimed back and they said, nope, AFFF was never used at this installation. Blah, blah, blah. They're giving excuses. So the issue I have is for individuals that were assigned to installations where the DoD is claiming no AFFF was used. Apparently, they will be ineligible for this registry if they have developed, cancers or anything like that, or they just want to put themselves out there. So, how do we deal with those individuals? Just like those that never deploy but still get sick. What plan is in place to identify and deal with those individuals? And I couldn't find anything yet through this. So there's a lot of questions with this. Like I said, it almost seems like it got thrown through the House. That's how Congress works. They push things through. Because, hey, it's environmental. Hey, it looks great. This is a win-win for everybody. And then the Senate side, senators, they take the time to read through, what the House has presented the Senate. And really, this is, the House bill is somewhat of a draft. Say, hey, this is our proposal. It goes to the Senate. Senate, makes it bleed, if you will. They take their red ink pen, scratch out this, write in this, send it back to the House. The House looks at it, and they're going to be like, well, yeah, okay, we get that, or no, we still don't like that. So it goes, it goes back and forth. And that's why I say with various pieces of legislation, especially the Mike Leasing Act, that's sort of what's happening with his bill. Aside from those that make amendments, legislation comes down to whose name is at the top of that, who started it, who's responsible for getting it passed, and that's not how it should be. I don't care whose name is at the top. I care who does the bill, who does the legislation affect. And, in this case, at the end of the day, it's veterans, it's firefighters. It really should be civilians. It should be military families. It should be all inclusive, not pick and choose, and these are your eligible individuals. So, but if they were to do that $207 billion, you might as well say $207 trillion. And that's why the PFAS legislation, in my opinion, has been stalled, because if they make it a presumptive that firefighters, their cancers, it's presumed to be associated with PFAS exposure, for military and civilian, you're looking at billions, if not trillions of dollars in medical compensation, care and treatment, for the rest of their life. There's simply not enough money in the coffers, in the congressional coffers, in their purse, if you will, to handle that. The VA knows that. That's why they're pushing back on it. Aside from, money compensation to the veteran, now you've got to start creating more positions within the VA to handle this surge of veterans that are going to start filing claims and want medical care and treatment. So you've got the veterans that want money. You're going to have VA employees, that want money. Their facilities are likely going to have to get bigger, because, again, we're already dealing with waiting times at these VA locations. You start doubling, tripling the VA patient load, if you will, the number of VA patients coming in. Those wait times are going to be even longer. And we've seen this with small areas. Veterans, they wait a year before they see their doctor. I mean, I just started going to the VA, and I was going to a civilian doctor for the longest time. Great civilian doctor. But then I was like, was talking to another veteran. He's like, dude, go to the VA. Everything's paid for. I'm like, okay. So, I go to the VA. I get in there. I don't even see my initial doctor, my assigned doctor. I see somebody else. She was great. We did the web telemedicine. She was sitting across the state somewhere. Pops up on camera. I go through. I mentioned PFAS. That got blown off real quick. So, it wasn't, I don't think my regular appointment to see my regular doctor was like 6 months down the road. The only reason I got to go see him earlier was because I had COVID pneumonia. I got out of the hospital and they scheduled a follow-up. So somehow he found a spot to see me. It was a long, in-depth appointment. He went through everything, and I'm like, well, if you could see me now, why couldn't we schedule that before? But is what it is what it was. But I mentioned the whole PFAS thing in there, and I'm still on the fence with this doctor. He seems okay. But when it came, I brought up the whole PFAS. I had to break it down and explain it to him. He's like, yeah, he goes, I heard of that. And then, I talked about the VA not doing a blood test. So, I'm well educated on the VA's refusal to do blood tests. So he goes to the VA's page and prints off the PA fact sheet. I'm like, brother, I've already got that and so much more. I said, you can keep that. I don't need it. I said, how about you go to their website and look at the little yellow box that says they don't recommend PFAS blood test. And then how about you talk to some folks within the VA and say, yeah, this is needed. Because the other thing that really irked me, he put me down as a average risk to prostate cancer as a firefighter. And I'm like, no, we as firefighters are high risk of cancer for all cancers. because of the nature of the job and the crap that we're exposed to. Why would you put me down as average? So again, you gotta listen and look at things when you go to your doctor's appointments, especially in the VA, because if you feel that it's wrong, you as a patient have every right to go ahead and make them change it, educate them. You got to steer your own medical on this. So, yeah, I don't want to go too much on, here. I was hoping to just do like a quick half-hour podcast today, but you see how it can skew off into another topic. But with this particular bill, and again, this one is dated from 2021. It's the 117th Congress. Looks like the second session. The article itself does not actually give the bill. I wish they would. I'm going through looking at it. This is one thing I hate with some news, some publishers like this, or not publishers, news authors, journalists, if you will. They talk about these things and they say, hey, here's the title, but they don't actually give a link to the damn bill or piece of legislation that they're talking about. So you got to do your homework. You got to dig and dig and dig. And that's what I try to do as much as I can and get it out there. If I do find a newer version of this, I'll try to see if I can find the Senate one. I will post that. I'll share that in the podcast description as well. So, again, comments, questions, concerns, good or bad feedback, please put it in the, whether it's on Facebook, put it in the comments. If it's on YouTube, put it in the comments. I try to get back to, those that comment as quick as I can. Again, give us a like, thumbs up, subscribe. Again, once we break that threshold, we're going to go ahead and do a little giveaway for, someone that we pick. And then, yeah, go from there. So pardon the scruffiness. I just didn't shave today, so looking my best. So as always, I think that's going to do it for this podcast. Like I said, get in there, read these bills. I mean, I can't. You've heard me say it before. I'm going to beat a dead horse here. Read these pieces of legislation, because don't sit back and wait until they're passed and then bitch about them. Bitch about them now while they're being discussed. Reach out to your legislators. Call them every day. Send them emails every day. My congressional representative, Fred Keller, he lost his district here in Pennsylvania. They did a whole redistricting of a map. He's out. He has no district, and he just recently. He was going to run for the 9th district here in Pennsylvania against somebody, but I think he knew he doesn't stand a chance. He definitely does not stand a chance against. I think we're now in the 15th district, but yeah, he's out, and I'll be honest. Good riddance to you, Fred, because I've tried reaching out to you on various pieces of legislation. And you absolutely ignored me and other firefighters that shared the same concern. So, good luck on whatever you do after Congress. But finally, we go back to somebody that does, in my opinion, care and will fight for firefighters here in Pennsylvania. So, plus he lives right up a short distance from me here. So with that, folks. I'm done talking. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Share it out to your friends. Again, read legislation, get educated, and be involved in the political system, because if you just sit back and do nothing, you're going to get what you get and have no say. So folks, that's going to do it for this episode. We again, I appreciate the audience. I appreciate your support. So as always, keep supporting your fire emergency services, whether it's military, civilian, local, state, federal. And as always, stay safe. Until next time, I'm out of here.